And the title itself, Weary and Well Doing. And I know for a fact that it's a heavy one. For those who know what weary is, and I'm gonna just put it in simple terms, getting tired. You are tired. You are worn out. And many times, man, as I sit back and I think about weary and well doing, and I'm getting a little tired now just thinking about the word. So it is a pretty big thing. We know many times, the scripture talks about us, not getting, weary and well doing. We know Galatians 6 and 9, it speaks about, let us not be weary in well doing, that if we don't, if we don't faint, we will reap in due season. And so we know for a fact that the Bible is mindful of us as people, that there are moments in time that we can get weary. And when we get weary, what do we do in those moments that we feel depleted? And it's crazy when you think about weary, you think about someone that they are at their max and they feel like in many ways they can't take that next step. I know for a fact that, and we're going to talk about it. I actually know for a fact that I have experienced those moments in my life where I have gotten weary to the point where it's seasons that I have walked through that I didn't think I could take another step. Weary and well doing. Weary when I pastored, Sunday worships, trying to make sure everything is presentable because you want to do a great job for God, and find yourself getting a little weary, you know, weary as you are uplifting others, and then feel like in cases that you feel like you have no one to uplift you. Those are the kind of things there that we as people and as leaders go through. I know for a fact that just about everyone that's on here have probably experienced the season of weariness. Those desert places, you're in those moments where you feel like you're thirst, but your thirst haven't been quenched. Weary brings a lot of different misfiring and malfunction. When people get weary, sometimes they get thirsty. They get a little desperate in many ways. When you weary, you sometimes don't think it all the way through because you're tired. As an example, when a parent come in from work and they had a hard and crazy day, and the first thing that you're met with, mama, mama, daddy, 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 mama, 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 daddy, daddy. And you have to have a moment to, whoa, hold up. Give me a moment to come to myself before y'all start coming in and railing in all of these different things that y'all got going. Give me a moment. What is weary when we think about it? What is weary to you guys? What are moments that y'all have walked through where you felt like you tired and man, it's hard taking that next step? Because I know for a fact that when I look back over my life and I see where God had brought me from, uh, I think one of the biggest lies that I can attest to being who I am and the years of seeing people in church testifying. I think one of the biggest lies that sometimes the older saints used to say is that, I haven't sinned all day long and, I haven't gotten tired yet, those kind of things there. Do anybody remember those moments you be at church and, you get one of the old saints and they talk about it, they've been running for a long time and they ain't gotten tired yet. When you sit back and you think about what they just said, And of course, when you're younger, you don't know any better. You just listening to mother talk about her running and she ain't gotten tired yet. But when you grow up and you experience life and you see where life have taken you and the ups and downs of life, you can see that what mother said wasn't quite accurate. It was some faulty conversation in that. It was some fault. It was some misfiring that we know for a fact that was not the case, because if you live, and everyone breathing, somewhere in the midst of your life, you've gotten a little tired. And that's even running for the Lord. Not necessarily that we're ready to throw our towel in on God, but sometime in leadership and trying to press through difficult moments in those midnight hours, you get a little tired, and that's the thing about it. When we sit back and we even look at the life of Jesus, you know, many times we sit back and we see the moment that when, that hour was coming where Jesus was going to be taken. He wanted the disciples to come and pray with him, and Jesus went off and he prayed. Lord, if this, if it's possible, take this cup from me, but not my will, Lord, but let your will be done, God. So we see even in our Savior's life that there is a such thing as being weary, weary to take that next step, weary to, trying to figure out how to make one end, connect with the next end. And those are some very serious moments, because we all can attest that when you get tired, it takes a lot to get you back on the path again, or back in the saddle, you know, because when you get weary, a lot of things happen in those seasons. You know, the the vision that you might have had, it gets a little distorted. You sit back and you wonder, like, Lord, you know, getting tired, been running for a long time, and I really haven't seen any different, when I first started 20 years ago to where I'm at right now. What do you do when your seasons haven't changed? What do you do? What are the things that how do you fight when you're in seasons where you feel that you did all you can do, and you at that last, and you feel like you have ran out, like you're out of gas now? What do you do? How do you go about trying to refuel when you feel that you don't even have enough in the tank to make it to the gas station? What do you do? What do you do when you feel that you done did all you can and your legs is too tired to take that next step? When it seemed like you wanted to go right, but everything went left, and you're tired and you're exhausted, what do you do? How do you overcome situations where you done got weary and well doing? Because we know that the enemy desires for us to get weary and for us to faint. Because if we faint, that means that we would not reap in the due seasons that God has for us. The enemy job is to steal, kill, and to destroy. What do you do when you have found yourself in those low moments and you feel like, I don't have enough fight in me anymore? Like, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I don't know what to do. Because when you get weary, it brings a lot of confusion. You don't know which way to go. You don't know which way to really take the next step. You were not sure of your footing. What do you do in those moments when you're not sure of your footing? Many times we question when we're not sure of our footing, we go and we rehearse in our mind. So we go this way or that way, this way or that way, this way or that way, because we got weary. We are not thinking right. And even in the physical example, how many of us have, gotten really tired physically, and then it comes to a point where, we're so tired, we're so exhausted, and we find ourselves not being able to even go and get cleaned up. Have y'all ever worked so hard, or y'all done did this or that, where it seemed like you don't have enough energy to do the necessary things? That's when you have gotten weary. And the thing about it, no one is exempt from being weary. Nobody. Christ himself wasn't exempt from getting weary. So what do you do when you have did all you can do and it seems like nothing have changed? You don't have enough energy to go any further. So tonight we got a good topic, because through this conversation, somebody's going to be helped. And I'm not talking about us, and maybe it's somewhere that this is hitting home for someone here. But I know when the replays and as the nonprofit grows and people get to know who we are, or they cross these videos, whether it's a year down the road or 2 years, and it got enough traction to spread a little bit further, and some mother is sitting there tired, exhausted, depleted, and she come across this video, I'm pretty much sure through these conversations that we're having tonight, she's going to be helped. Or the father who felt that he did everything he possibly can to make things work for his family. I'm pretty much sure in this session that we're having right now, they're going to replay, they're going to play it, and they're going to be helped. Because on tonight, we're talking about weary and well-doing. So these are the kind of things that are, and anyone who want to jump in, just jump right on in. Jump in, say what you're going to say, and let us take in and receive what you're talking about. So who wants to talk about it a little bit further? Weary and well-doing. Weary and well-doing. I'm going to say this right here then. Luke 22:31-34. This is the Lord talking to Simon, and he said, Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you as wheat, but I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. And the crazy thing about it, if you listen to the second part of that 32nd verse, the ending, he said, and when you have turned back, when you done gotten it right, Simon, because I want to let you know, you human, you are going to get weary. Satan is doing everything he can to sift you. But I'm going to let you know, Simon, is that you are going to fail, Simon. He said, but I'm going to let you know is that when you fail, and after you have came back, I want you to go and strengthen your brothers. And the 33rd verse says, but he replied, Lord, I am ready to go with you into prison, into death. Lord, I'm good. Then the 34th verse says, well, Jesus said, I tell you, Peter, it says, before the rooster crows today, you will deny me not once, not twice, but 3 times. Tim.
So I was trying to give somebody else a chance, but I really am enjoying what you're saying on tonight. And I was thinking about, like you said, on a personal aspect, on when we get weary. And for me, I think that that's been in different situations. Sometimes that's been something for my own self and just the activities and things that I might be engaged in, or even sometimes just investing as a leader, sometimes investing in other people and giving of yourself, giving of your resources, giving of your time. And sometimes having to recognize that it all what you do might not always be, I guess, sometimes you can want more for people than they want for themselves, and then that can wear you down. And sometimes you're more preoccupied with helping them in their situation than they are and helping themselves in their situation. And sometimes it's just been, even for my own self personally, like you said, think about a time I can remember when I was juggling, still juggling hats, but at one point juggling school full time, work full time, ministry, we were doing that full time, and just all the things, and then being a mom and a wife and all those other hats and things can really take a toll mentally and physically and spiritually. And I think for me, um, I think two key things that really have helped me, and I feel like this is a continual growth thing, is taking the time to, in those moments of weariness, maybe even stopping and pausing long enough to evaluate, because sometimes we can be weary because we've put things on our plate that maybe shouldn't even be on our plate, or we're preoccupied with things that, we're actually, sometimes we're making ourselves weary because we're involved in, whether it be different relationships, whether they be platonic type relationships or romantic relationships, or things that we've allowed to come into our lives that are wearing us down. So sometimes the weariness is an invite by our own doing. But then, so taking that time to evaluate and look at things, but then there are times where it is the right thing to do and you are doing a great work, but it's just needing to press forward. And so in those times, I think for me personally, it's remembering my why. And then before you even jump into different tasks or before you endeavor on things, I think you need to know your why at the beginning. Because if you know your why at the beginning, and you can keep yourself reminded, so that way when you have those moments and you evaluate it and yeah, this is what God has called me to do. Yes, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So you're evaluating and you know that things are in alignment and they're in His will, reminding yourself to keep going and to not forfeit. And I think about, like you saying, getting weary. I think about, like, in Genesis 25, where it talks about Esau and how he gave up his birthright because he was so tired. He's like, oh, well, I'll give it up. Give me that stew, because I need to eat now, because what good is my birthright going to do if I die out here anyway? And I think sometimes, I say it loosely, but he gave up something so huge for something so small and something in the moment. And I think that when we're in our moments of weariness, if we're not careful, we'll forfeit those bigger promises of God's and those bigger rewards. And that could be anything, whatever. And I think sometimes it's very personalized, but sometimes we forfeit so much more for so little, because when we're weary, we're not focusing properly, and our mind is not brought back to the why. And then we'll sacrifice so much for so little. And so for me personally, I think it's like, definitely, those moments of weariness will happen, but evaluating, and then two, remembering the why so you can keep going and that you don't forfeit and that you don't miss out. And then personally, like even when I talked about like investing in people and relationships and things, and I say that because as believers, I believe that that's a key piece of what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be building relationships with people. We're supposed to be disciples, and we're supposed to be displaying that love and being an example. And sometimes it's easy to be like, oh, nobody's listening anyway, or oh, they're, somebody's just going to take advantage this time, or they're not going to appreciate it anyway. And if you're not careful keeping your mindset in check, because there's plenty of negativity and there's plenty of bad things and there's plenty of bad stories to justify not doing anything, but that's not what we're called to. And I believe that a key thing that I've had to learn is not always necessarily me doing my own natural assessment of a situation, because sometimes we can think they didn't appreciate that, or that didn't go anywhere, or that was pointless. But we have no idea, because it's not always for us to know the impact and the riveting effects that something may be going on and taking place in people's lives, and the work that God may be doing that we might not ever really see. We could take it in the natural and think that that was wasted, but in the spiritual, we don't realize the magnitude of the choices. And so I think that it's so key not to focus necessarily on the response, and not to focus so much on the immediate or what we're evaluating in the natural. Because if we start looking at those things will make us weary as well. So when we bring our focus back, we focus on our strength giver, because when we're trying to do things in our own strength, that'll make us weary too. But taking it and placing ourselves back in Christ's hands and putting it in Him, we can do all things through Christ, not through Kim, not through AWDO, not through all our other organizations, not through our own abilities, but doing it through Him. He'll renew our strength, renew our mind, renew our focus, and help us in those moments of weariness, and even in some aspects, even maybe prevent our weariness if we before we even get to a place of that.
Wow. Everything that you said is really good, man. Because those are the kind of things that we have to do. We have to focus back. We have to get our mind right. We have to pause and reflect. We have to, as they say, go and take a look in the mirror, see some things on a higher level, examine some things and see the reasoning why that we have gotten into a place where we feel like we have gotten weary. And those are the things that's important. Man, I sit back and I think about, how do we get to a place where we once was excited for and now we have gotten exhausted to even do now? How do we get to that? What have transpired, what have taken place? And I see our thumbs up.
All right, man. This has been an amazing topic, and y'all have brought up like so many good things. And I like how real this is, and how real and transparent we can be, knowing that we're not able to do anything on our own strength, and understanding that is key. Knowing that we draw all from He who sits on the hill from which cometh our help. But this kind of makes me think. We can't rush through seasons, and we can't rush through moments. Think about when Jesus was going to Lazarus, and he had the ability to bring him back to life and all that kind of stuff. And the scripture simply said Jesus wept. Now, he didn't have to because he knew he had the power. He could heal him, he could restore him and all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't about that. It was about him being in that moment. He was feeling, he was empathizing, he was saying the product of what happened to his friend, and then how it's affected the family in that outcome. And so what he teaches us is to stand. After you've done all you can, you stand and you embrace that moment. But a part of standing is allowing you not to be moved, right? Like the tree by the water, because he don't want you shifting in these seasons. But as you stay still, the standard rises up. The word, all of the deposits that you've been getting in due season, in the season where you're receiving and all that, is only to make you strong for when the drought comes. We get dehydrated. When you get dehydrated, you kind of stop eating, and your body really kind of starts shutting down. You get to a place to where you do become weary, and not just physically, but even spiritually. And so think about when John the Baptist, I'm talking about cuz got beheaded, and cuz like they hit home for the Lord, and the Lord had to go off. And he was just like, that was cuz. Like, let me go off and away for a little bit. I don't know how to handle this. And in the midst of doing that, that shows that we should take that time, absorb it, take in those feelings, go off to a place in your mind of solitude. Don't go around chaos. Don't go around people who are not going to be sensitive to where you are in that moment. But when you go off, take care of your spirit, of your mind, and make sure that you're relying on peace, that rest, that Sabbath rest that comes in the Lord. And when we rely on that rest, you don't lose sight of when you come back around the people, because right after that, the people came flooding into Jesus, and he didn't mistreat them. He didn't say, doggone it, I need a moment. Cuz just died, man, get out of here. Like he didn't do any of that. It's just like, man, let me do right by them, and really showed us what it looks like to embark on journeys such as these. Another thing, when you are depleted of your reserves, and that standard has risen up, you just get to a place where, I served in the military. Hygiene and all that kind of stuff is important, is vital. But we all know when anxiety kick in, depression, mental health, and different things like that, you get to a state of mind sometimes where you're neglecting hygiene. Hygiene in the spirit would be things like prayer, reading the word, and all that kind of stuff, which is also why it's essential to have a good community around you. You can't be as good as the people that you have in your inner circle, so that when you're down and you're out of season, as the Lord would call it, when you're out of season, those who are in season, or those who even out of season, can intercede, and you guys together can get that strength to help make it through, and really just rise to the occasion with your spirit. So even that community factor is major, and that's why it's important not to look at somebody else and frown upon them, or put your judgments, or cast your ideas on what you think they should be doing, because it all goes back in the cycle. The Lord always operates, well, two ways. We operate in cycles, and Lord try to break our cycles with his seasons. And so if we're not careful, we'll stay and locked in those cycles. And that's a lot of reason why we have to get to places like this of being weary, because guess what happens if we never get weary? We ain't tired. We've got two jobs. We gonna do this all day, and the Lord don't want us doing certain things all day sometimes, because we'll never be able to move on to the next.
Brother, that was really good, man. Really good, really good. Anybody else want to jump in? Just jump right on in, because we are talking about being weary and well doing. The season of weary. When you're on that, you in the valley. And it's crazy because sometimes we find ourselves in that valley, uh, that seasonal moment where we're pretty low and trying to climb a mountain but don't have the energy for it. Those are the kind of things that we deal with. And the crazy thing about it, when you think of what the scripture says, Galatians 6:9, it says, "And let us not be weary in well doing." Wasn't that we got weary because we was doing something crazy, you know. It wasn't that we got weary because we doing things that are left instead of right. It didn't even mention that. It talked about us being weary and well doing. Those things that seem like it should get us to that place because it's doing things in the rightful manner. Doing those things, we are doing good, but then we're getting exhausted as we are. Those are the kind of things there that, don't get weary in well doing. You're on your path, you're heading down the road, but you've been traveling a little bit further than you thought you should. You're climbing that mountain and you thought that you would have made it to the top by now, and you still haven't. You know, you've been on a battlefield for a long time. And it seemed like that you still haven't seen the war progress in a way that you thought. What do you do in those moments? Because we're talking about, I mentioned earlier the scripture where Jesus told Peter, "Hey, Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times," but he the same one, right? I said it the last time, the same one that walked on water with Jesus, seen the miracles, but he even got weary. He found himself on the left side instead of the right. What happened in those moments in season where you thought that it was fixing to go this way, and then all of a sudden it went the other way, and you feel like you're further behind than you should be? What do you do in those moments? How do you overcome in those moments when You gave it all you got, but the giant didn't fall. What did you do? You thought you was gonna have a David type story, right? You thought because you seen David didn't have to go throw hands with Goliath. He had a doggone rag and a rock. He took the giant down and grabbed the giant's sword and cut off the giant's head. What do you do when you thought your story was going to be like that because you're fighting for God and it happened? That's the kind of stuff that's getting weary and well doing. When you done gave all that you got into the ministry, but you haven't seen the fruits just yet. You've been picking up Sister Caliber for a long time. She haven't upgraded. You still having to do it. You're getting tired because no one sees the weariness or no one wants to acknowledge that you're tired. What do you do when you're the one that people are depending on? And if they only knew that you was tired than they are, but they're looking for you to keep going forward. What do you do in those moments? Those are the kind of things there that you can say that, man, I got weary and well doing. Like I've been chugging along and it still ain't happened. You guys have already gave the answer. It's about our perspective. Kim said it earlier. You have to know the reason why you're doing it. if it's for clout, if it's to be rich and famous, if it's to be all of these, you got a long journey ahead. The enemy desires for us to get distracted because when you get weary and you don't recognize that sometimes a no to that person is God's blessing to give you rest, and you don't recognize that, you can get weary. You can get weary when you thought that you're supposed to take everybody, and the Lord say, no. Those are the things that can cause weariness in your life. Man, look at MC Hammer. Man, when he started traveling, he took the whole shebang. He took cousins. He took everybody with him. And his funds was depleted. What do you do when you thought that you're supposed to take everybody, but the Lord said no? People throughout the Bible, where we see that they thought they needed everybody, and the Lord said, no, you don't need that. I can work with what you got. Because if you try to take everybody, if you try to do this all on your own, if you try to figure it out all on your own, Moses' father-in-law would say, hey, Moses, you can't do all of this. You would drop dead from helping all these folks, and these folks still going to be complaining. So I need for you to think higher. Put it in the Lord's hand and let him work it out, Kim.
No, I've been listening to some really great points, and you said something that made me think about, about our circle and how important it is, even with the people that we surround ourselves. Because you mentioned something, and I know, like many of us, just because of what we do and the conversations we've had, for a lot of people, we are those people that people count on. We're the goers, we're the doers, we're the beers. And I think that it's really important how you mentioned that. I think that it's good for those of us to also have a circle, have people. I will say, not just because I'm a part of the organization, but I've really personally have enjoyed the Let's Talk sessions, because it's giving us an opportunity to come together. And I think sometimes, even I think sometimes we don't even realize, but sometimes we forfeit those opportunities, or don't realize how good they can be. Yes, we are coming together to help other people, but it also helps us too, even in the company and the circles that we surround ourselves in, because it helps to strengthen us and to build us up with one another. Because sometimes when you are the goers and the doers, people think because you're still moving that you're okay, because you're still moving. And sometimes it's only people who are also the movers who can sometimes recognize and take the time to recognize that it's all the stuff that you don't see. Like sometimes people don't realize that, oh, you know what? Pastor might be tired. You know what? Oh, or mom might be tired, or whoever it is, or oh, my friend might actually be tired, because a lot of times they're still moving and they're going. But I think sometimes it's important for us. I know we're talking about our own personal weariness, but I think it's important for us to also maybe pause and take the time to start assessing and looking at the people in our lives and in the people that God has placed in our circles, to pause long enough to say, you know what? How are they doing? How are you? Just pausing long enough, because just because somebody keeps moving and they're going, and sometimes, people can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? Can you do this? Oh, you got it. You got it. And it doesn't mean that people don't want to help. Like, I'm a person that I love to help people. I'm willing to help people. I'm willing to go the mile, because that's just I love it, and it gives me joy to help other people. But sometimes it is good. I've told my family sometimes, is that, hey, on some stuff, if you can do that, go ahead and do that. That helps me too. And I think sometimes we have to even personally evaluate and look at the people in our lives and say, before I get ready to say, hey, will you say, you know what, is this something that maybe, how can I help them? Or is this something that maybe I can do? And so I think on the flip side of the weariness is just also, one, surrounding ourselves with people who can help keep us uplifted and motivated, and help even remind us of our why sometimes. Letting people in that are healthy, that help keep us directed spiritually and mentally and even physically in aspects, and say, hey, you look tired, you need a break, or hey, let me watch, let me take the kids for a little bit, let you do that. And so, but you have to have a circle of minded people who aren't selfish minded in your circle, who aren't just takers. Because takers, they'll run you dry, and they'll pull you till there's nothing left, and then scoop over you like a speed bump and keep going to the next person they can get from. But if you have a healthy circle around you, they'll take the time to pause and say, they're moving, but what's going on up here? They're still doing, but what's going on up here? And taking that time. So I think that's important. One, for us to be mindful of who we have in our circle, and to be careful, because the enemy loves to isolate. Because if he could take us away from the people that help keep us built up, then that means that in those moments, we won't have good counsel. We'll have, sometimes it could be that negative chatter, or even our own self being the negative chatter. And then two, being mindful of, if there are things that are positive in your life that help bring you closer and are building you up, fighting for those things. Where we might be busy and we get going and going, but sometimes having to stop long enough to say, this was really helping me. Let me move my schedule around so I can make sure I do this, or let me move my schedule, make sure I have time for prayer. Let me make sure I have time for my devotional. Let me move my schedule and make time to just hang out with somebody, to hook up with another sister or a brother, to have a phone call, to have a session. Those things are healthy, and they're good. And I say all this stuff being transparent, there's reminders to my own self, because it's good for us to take those time and take those moments to help us, and to not isolate. And then, like I said, being mindful and being the one to be considerate of somebody else for a change. Not this all me and my weariness and me and my sickness and me and my this and me and my that, because I found for myself is that most of the times when I found myself in kind of a slump down mindset or even a place of self pity and depression, when I began to redirect myself and think about other people's situations and redirect my attention in helping others, science even says it's like it builds a spirit of gratitude, and that when you're helping other people, that it not only helps them, but it helps yourself too. And so when we change our focus from us and saying, hey, how can I help somebody else's life take care of things where they might be less weary in a certain area, it in turn helps you as well too.
Wow, that's really good, really good. Anybody else? We have about 9 minutes left, and we'll actually be ending it. I will say this is that it's so important. It's so important for us to guard our mind because we know that that's where it all happens at. That is the war room. That's the battlefield. And we know that the Bible says that we need to guard our mind because the enemy desires to attack that. He attacked that, when we let him, if we allow for him to get in and put up snares, we will get weary. They will, we will be in a place where we won't be able to take that step when we should have, and we will miss out on things. I believe it's so important for us to recognize when God is moving in a way where we can recognize it's him and not us. I'm a people's, people. I love people. I don't really meet strangers. And of course, anybody that know Kim and I, we have always been people who, when we say we are with you, we are with you. We are riding with you guys. And I would tell you that there have been moments in time where, we thought that it was good to carry this person, or to be there for these people, or however the case, and and we find ourselves getting very exhausted because for one simple thing is that it wasn't actually God, it was us because we love people so much that we wanted to see people flourish, but it wasn't God who told us to. Does that make sense to anybody? Like, you just want to see people doing good. You want to see people on the right path and they're doing what they're supposed to do and all those kind of things. But sometimes we can overstep God, you know, and in ways not at all trying to play God, but we can overstep him in ways where the Lord said, hey man, you getting tired and I didn't tell you to do that. I did not tell you to do that. That was on you. I didn't tell you to go there. That was on you. And those are the kind of things that we have to be very cautious about. Kim and I, we have been together for 25 years, been married 23. We done practically raised one another. And I would say this right here is that there have been moments in time where we have did all we can for people and we have left there exhausted. Perspective a little different. We have lived long enough now that we know now. We know that ain't God.
No, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Things that are good are not God.
Yeah. Yes. Lady Renty, you were right. And I see Alfonso.
So my last thought, I know we don't have long, is we who believe in the Lord rely heavily on his word. And it kind of goes into, like you said, we read these stories, right? And we go, the way we read, we're going story from story and just it's all sounding good. It's all motivational and different things like that. And it kind of puts us in the mind where when we do that, we feel like our lives should resemble that. Like everything should be blessings on blessings on blessings. And that's just not how it works. unsung, right? We all sing the unsung, and we all look at, wait a minute, all this was happening, like you talked about MC Hammer. All this was going on behind the scenes, but we were seeing the show and they were still keeping up the appearances. But what we don't realize is the unsung was still important because it was a lot of the makeup of what that person ended up doing in the long run. The Lord knows the story before it's been told. So because he's eternal, he knows the end game. But even in our unsung moments, it's important that we don't get that remote and try to hit fast forward on our weary moments. That we enjoy those moments. Even in those moments, when that's when we should really just be grateful and content. Being content goes so long. It ain't that you not gonna be in your feelings sometimes. It's okay to be mad sometimes. It's okay to just feel off, and sometimes you just be in a space where you feel like you don't even hear from the Lord. But there's just a certain peace still where you're just like, but you know what? In spite of, I'm content, and I'm just going, just try to maintain what I'm doing. Just striving. That's really the word. A lot of people have gotten away from the strive. It's a real thing. Striving is not being perfect. This is really just showing that, yeah, I'm kind of doing my unsung right now. I've seen better days, but that's what we're living for, right? That's the hope. That's the faith. And if we don't have the hope or faith, then why are we Christians? Why are we soldiers? That's a part of the battle, and some things just come with it. That's my final thought on that.
Alfonso, man, I gotta hit you with this, brother. Man, so you saying that we can't just speed it up a little bit, man? Just a little bit. It don't have to go into 4x, 3x, but just maybe 2x, man. Just fast forward just a little bit.
Hey, man, I'm gonna say this: whatever float they boat, but reflection is really what it comes down to. And when you reflect, it for myself, because I can only speak from my own experience. Sometimes I reflect, and I'm so glad sometimes that I didn't hit fast forward. That even when I've made bad decisions in my off seasons, that I just be like, but I learned something from that, even without hitting fast forward. And so I gotta hit with the reflection piece on that. When you reflect, do you want to have a fast forward moment on that reflection, or do you want to learn something from it?
Man, that is good, brother. That is good, man. Simple as that right there, brother. I mean, that's really good. Because I tell you, man, that's where our growth really comes in at. Man, I just have to throw that in, but that's where our growth comes in at. Through those seasons, God do teach us so much, and we have like a minute left. He teaches us so much. I have experienced those seasons on just about all kind of levels. And I'm learning, and I have learned that the biggest part of my weariness have came in trying to see others supersede, others grow, others do better. And when most times it's never in their heart. And those are the things there. Now, I'm not at all saying that we should not encourage people, because we should do that. We should be able to be leaders in many aspects and ways of life. But then we should have enough God to understand when it's just better for us to put it in God's hand and leave it there. And sometimes our weariness comes from when the Lord said, hey, pass it to me. And we don't want to pass it to him. Or when we pass it to him, we go back and we say, hey, God, well, they still needed this. Or, hey, God, I think I can help out a little bit better with that. And the whole time the Lord said, hold up. It's not what I'm telling you. And sometimes in life, not being weary is also having enough wisdom that when you know it's time to let go and let God, that's what he's asking for. To let go and let him. And when we do that, we stop trying to figure it out, when we stop trying to make it work, when we stop trying to, in many ways, God forbid, we don't try to intentionally play God. when we allow for God to be God, when we allow for us to move by him, acknowledging him in all of our ways, then that's when he will direct our path. That's when we can make it through that weary stage and we can finally reap the benefit because we didn't faint. That's the blessings that God gives.